Is Trump going to get sentenced before the election?
It's complicated. I'm Renato Mariotti. I'm a former federal prosecutor, a practicing lawyer, and a legal analyst.
And I'm Asha Rangappa. I teach national security law at Yale University. I'm a former FBI special agent, and I'm a legal contributor for ABC News.
And we're here to help you understand topics that can't be boiled down into a soundbite or a tweet. So, Asha, we just I think we're both trying to process this recent request, really just moments ago, from the lawyers for Donald Trump, Todd Blanche and Emile Beauvais, essentially asking the judge to push the sentencing after the election, basically alleging that it amounts to election interference.
Yes. So I'm trying to understand exactly the basis, because they're also suggesting that Judge Merchan has conflicts.
Right. So one thing that they're doing, and I feel like this is more election related, I mean, more of a political stunt than a legal one, is they're basically raising again to the judge that they think he's biased because his daughter has an interest in a firm, or is working for a firm that is doing business with the Harris-Walz campaign. And I think while whether there's something to that or not, I will just tell you, somebody who practices law and practices criminal law across the country, once a judge has told you I'm not recusing more than once, like continuing to press those arguments over and over again is just a complete loser and is not going to help you. You've already made your record and you've got to deal with this judge. So pissing him off and constantly re-raising the same issue is not going to get you anywhere.
Right. So right now, the sentencing date is September 18th.
Right, which is obviously very close to the election. And essentially the Trump lawyers are raising a few different points. They've already raised this recusal point that's essentially gone nowhere. They're also pointing out that, hey, judge, there's this immunity decision from the Supreme Court. We don't have your ruling on that yet, but you told us you'd get us your ruling and the sentencing date still stands. And as you yourself acknowledged, there's a chance that maybe we won't need a sentencing based on your ruling there. Now, the reality is that it's apparent, I think, by the fact that the judge continues to have the date set, that it's likely that he's not going to rule in Trump's favor. All right. He knows as well as anybody that if he rules for Trump completely on everything, then there won't be a sentencing. And he still has that date in the calendar, and I'm sure he's not holding it just for the point of it, right?
Right.
It's possible. It's possible he's holding it just to sort of, keep the date there out of abundance of caution, but it's unlikely. And so that's another argument that I think is interesting, but it's unlikely to prevail.
So, but there is one thing that he's saying here, right? Which is they've challenged the actual convictions based on the Supreme Court's immunity ruling, right? So this goes back to something we discussed a few weeks ago, this idea that there were official acts, quote unquote, that were used as evidence in this trial. And Trump's lawyers are claiming that that somehow taints these convictions, that, if those are official acts and those should not have been allowed in as evidence, that his conviction should be reversed. Now, they filed that motion. Merchan, as you just said, has that motion on the 16th. But what they're saying is that they need time for that to get appealed, and that if he's sentenced 2 days later, that somehow harms him.
Right.
That could be. I mean, in other words, if what you're saying is true, it's unlikely that Merchan is going to uphold, or going to, vacate this conviction or something. is there a plausible argument that he needs some time to appeal that particular ruling, since that gets to whether or not he is in fact convicted?
So in a typical case, let's just say that this person's name was not Donald Trump, it was like Donald Rangappa. In that hypothetical scenario, I actually think, first of all, no, I'm not sure anyone would be in any hurry to have the case sentenced. In other words, if there are issues like why do we need to do it in September versus November versus March? Like, and ultimately the guy's already been convicted. He's not going anywhere. He's not going to flee over this sentence, that's not going to be substantial, most likely. So why are we in such a hurry to get this sentencing done? I think that there'd be some weight to that argument in a typical case. And I think Trump's argument, and I think there's something to this, is, well, why not let me appeal this before you go forward with the sentencing?
Right.
And why have this timing just 2 months before the election? Like, there is early voting in their view. They've made this point that's going on at this point. Why, in September, why have this happen when perhaps an appellate court's going to say, and I think there's some chance that this could happen. I mean, I think there's an issue. I think we've discussed this in the past that, well, I think Judge Merchan is likely to rule against Trump. I'm not sure an appellate court will in New York. So why not give him that opportunity? That's essentially the argument they're making. And, as Trump lawyers' arguments go, this is one of the better ones that they've made.
Yeah, that's what it seemed like to me.
Yeah.
That seemed like but I mean, Merchan, I guess, is there any way for them to make him change it? In other words, what's the recourse if he says, nope, I'm still going to rule on immunity, and 2 days later I'm going to sentence you?
There's not much recourse. And that's the thing, we've talked about in other episodes, Asha, that, we've used the example of when we're in the Mar-a-Lago case. So we've ran all these scenarios of what could happen with Judge Cannon. And one point I've made over and over and over again is that a judge has tremendous discretion, a trial judge, over their calendar. And here, this is really Merchan managing his calendar and his docket. And so is it possible in those 2 days that they're going to have some interlocutory appeal and get an appellate court to tell Merchan, no, you need to delay this? Maybe. I wouldn't, but I would not bet money on that. I think realistically, Merchan is giving them very little time to do anything. And he's managing his docket, saying, nope, I just want to get the sentencing done so I can move it off my plate. And they'll have to deal with it in the Court of Appeals after that. And so as a practical matter, this is not going to, I think that this is a case where Trump has some real arguments to make, but I don't think it's going to go in his way, at least for now, before the election.
So then it becomes what the appellate path is, and then how that would impact whatever sentence he gets, right? So let's game this out. Merchan gives a bench slap on the 16th and says, yeah, whatever immunity might have existed, this is harmless error. It would not have affected it doesn't impact the convictions. Trump goes all Donkey Kong on that and, starts appealing. 2 days later, Merchan says, and here we are for your sentencing. I don't know. He sentences him to, we've talked about this before, I don't even know what the possibilities are, to, cleaning up subways, to whatever, like 5 days in jail, 2 weeks. I don't know. You tell me what that is. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, though, that immunity ruling goes not only through the New York courts, but that's something that can go all the way back to the Supreme Court. And this court, I'm sorry to say, the way that they've designed their immunity ruling is that it always lands back in their lap to determine what it is, right? I don't know whether, even if they were to conclude whether something is official, not official, whether it would be in their purview to overrule like a determination that it was harmless error. I don't know that part of it for a state judgment. But so what happens if he's sentenced and then later, my point is that the Supreme Court says, we're throwing out these New York convictions?
Well, that's how this is such a bizarre case, particularly, it's really all about the principle of the thing here. Because let's just say Mershon sentences him, and I'm going to predict it's going to be like probation or something. Okay.
Okay.
Mershon has a sentencing and he's dragged into court, and Trump sentences, here's a fine, probation, whatever it ends up being, something very modest. In most clients are just going to be like, okay, well, let's just move on. Okay. I'm going to go watch Netflix. Maybe I'm going to watch some baseball. Yankees are, have exciting players this year, whatever. They're not going to be focused on this, but Trump, okay. Yeah. He appeals this till the end of time. And I think there's a chance in appellate court, we've talked about this, might decide based on like Hope Hicks' testimony that there's an issue here because of this evidentiary piece of the Supreme Court ruling. But then it's just like a paper thing. Like, okay, so after the election, they're going to be like, okay, well, actually, we need to have a new trial, maybe, or maybe your conviction's invalidated, or however that ends up coming out. I mean, who cares at that point in time? I don't know. And if he's the president, let's just say if he won, I mean, if he loses, like he's going to have bigger problems, potentially bigger trials that he's going to have to face. And if he wins, he's not going to, he's not going to sit for another trial anyway. So I don't even know if it matters at that point. In other words, it's sort of a fait accompli.
It's a fait accompli if it's a probation, as you said. If it's anything more substantive than that, then I do think it becomes complicated.
Well, it's interesting. Well, it's only going to be complicated if it's something he can't fulfill quickly. I mean, what if the judge actually gives him 2 nights in prison or cleaning up trash in the subway or whatever you suggested, and he has to do that in the middle of his campaign? I mean, I don't know. Will an appellate court intervene at that point? I don't know. If they don't,
would he be ordered to do it immediately? Is that when they sentence? Is it like? Because I thought that sometimes they sentence you and then it's like you report like 2 months later or something.
Right, that's right. And so I guess you could say you're going to report right after the election. I mean, I guess you could do that. You're going to report, 48 hours in prison, and you're going to report, after the election. I guess you could do that. I mean, that's also a situation where that could be very pointless. Like if he becomes president in the United States, I don't think the New York State will have the power to take the executive branch.
But he won't be even if he wins in November, he is not the president of the United States until January.
I suppose he'd be the president-elect. What a mess. I don't even know. I mean, if I was Judge Mershon's law clerk, I would be like, let's not get that cute. Let's not put ourselves in that silly position. We don't want to have a situation where the courts can't enforce its order, or it's creating a huge problem for the country. Let's just have something that whatever it is, it can be satisfied quickly, and justice has been served here in this case. That while yes, it is a Class E felony, there are plenty of first-time offenders who don't go to prison. So let's just come up with a penalty that can get resolved and be done with it. I just think that's
like picking up trash on the subway.
Right. But then if that happens, Asha, let's say that happens 48 hours later, you can't undo it. I mean, you picked up the trash. So that's what I said. It could be a fait accompli. That's why this is a little complicated. It's an interesting request. In many ways meritorious. If it was Donald Rangappa, maybe this would be, something that everyone would pay attention to, but it's not. And I think this is a case where Donald Trump may just end up on the short end of the stick on this one.
You and I have kind of been talking about how the legal news has slowed down, at least in terms of Trump. Because we're kind of like, nothing's moving, and we even talked about last week, the January 6th case is not moving. We just talked about like basically the one thing that's happening, which is the sentencing. So I don't know. Is this sort of like a non-issue really now?
I think for this election, it seems to be, and I'm not sure whether that's good or bad for Trump. I mean, I think Trump was using the fact that, it's like everyone was out to get him in his mind, or as some way of trying to draw sympathy for himself. And now it's kind of besides the point. I mean, whether the sentencing happens or not, I don't know if that's good for him or bad. But I think Harris is just sort of off in her own lane, doing her own thing. she's, we're looking forward, not backward, or, and that's the kind of really ultimately the theme of her campaign. Let's not go back, or whatever her slogan is. And so he's got to deal with that. And I mean, there's real policy differences between the two of them as well, and that are getting played out. So I'm not really sure any of this is all that important. And really, if I'm thinking about what the legal news is, there's all sorts of legal news that, is not about Donald Trump anymore. And it's not really anything that impacts the election.
Yeah. I did think that Harris did a good job. I think at one of her rallies, I guess they started a lock him up chant, and she just sort of, she was like, the courts will handle that. Like, didn't encourage it, didn't jump on it, moved on to something else. So that does neutralize a lot, his ability to make these politicized claims. Like if they're not even going to make it an issue, except for every now, like when Tim Walz was like, he has no convictions, except 34 that he already has or whatever.
And well, that's the thing in which I'm sure it's frustrating to the Trump camp, right? Is that, whatever arguments they have in front of Merchan, that's what I said, it may not get play out till after the election. And at that point, this argument about all the felony convictions, which of course is a valid point. I mean, he was convicted by a jury of his peers of whatever it was, 34 felonies. That's going to play out in the election. There's not a lot that they can do about it in the short run. So, Trump is somebody who has been able to get away with a lot. It's been interesting to see such a turn of fortune here. I mean, I was looking earlier today, Asha, because I did a thing with CoinDesk at the presidential prediction market. And Trump at one point was in the 70% something range, like 77% chance to win. And now he's at 44. It's amazing how within like 3-4 weeks, how radically public opinion has seen his chances of the presidency. And he's definitely now in a dogfight and running behind in some polls. And all of this stuff that we've spent so much time talking about has been kind of relegated to the sideline. Yeah.
Well, and also I think he was counting on, with Biden as the opponent, then the criminality kind of becomes central because they were going to use that against Biden.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, whatever, Burisma and Hunter Biden and laptops and God knows what. So that was also their strategy to kind of deflect. I feel like he tried that with Kamala Harris, I think a couple of weeks ago. Like it was some interview where he's like, and she's committing crimes. It wasn't very clear like what she had done, but I think he kind of floated the test balloon of maybe suggesting that she was committing crimes too, because look, it worked for him with Hillary. That, the suspicion, that's what they tried to do with Biden in the whole Zelensky call, is create the cloud of suspicion. So it's kind of his one trick pony, plot. And I think he's realizing it doesn't work with Kamala Harris because she's a former prosecutor. And yeah, I don't know that he knows what to do about it.
Well, I don't know either, and I'm not a psychiatrist, but one thing I've noticed is, some people try to play psychiatrist. I'm not one of them, but I will say that I do get the sense from him is that it takes him a while to kind of develop his
routine,
his line of attack, whatever. He tests various things out and tries different things out, and it takes him a while to get going and develop his best material that he tests out over time. And I think he did that with Hillary over the course of years. He did that with Biden. And I think it took him a while with Biden. In the beginning, he wasn't quite sure what to do with Biden either. I think with Harris, one thing that has not worked to his advantage is that he suddenly has to change his playbook very quickly and come up with things on the fly. And I'm not sure how much he knows about her. He doesn't seem to be very focused on a lot of the details regarding her.
Yeah. Well, I love watching it.
All right. So, Asha, I'm in my usual office. Where are you?
So I'm in Park City, Utah. I'm staying at the Stein Erikson Lodge. Did you ever watch Superman 2?
A bazillion years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know when they go to like the honeymoon suite in Niagara Falls?
Are you on your honeymoon,
I,
Asha? Have
I, I'm
you eloped on
not.
us?
No, I'm not in a
No.
honeymoon, but like I've got like this like fireplace, and then there's like a hot tub outside.
Wow.
Yeah, but
So are you with Lex Luthor?
I'm like literally by myself. It's so sad.
That is sad. Okay.
I know. But I'm here. I'm I'm here because I'm giving a talk.
Oh, wow.
And so they
For
put
what?
me up in this for the International Academy of Trial Lawyers.
Have you ever tried a case? How
No,
what do you tell you a trial lawyer? What do
I'm
you
not.
do?
I'm not. I'm talking. I'm going to be giving a talk on how and why lawyers become complicit in corruption and misconduct and unethical things, and like how we can create systems to.
Wow. How do you get gigs like this, Asha? No one ever flies me out. I mean, they fly me out to and I stay in like, some sort of, whatever the Days Inn to conduct a deposition. No one flies me out to Park City, Utah. Well, how did that happen?
Well, I know the current president of the International Academy of Trial Lawyers. And she saw me present on Russian disinformation and democracy way back in 2019 for the Texas Bar Association. So,
wow, pays to have friends in high places. Well, yeah. I'm jealous. If you want to join Asha in Park City, leave a comment in the YouTube.
I leave tomorrow. I didn't.
Oh my God!
I know it's a turn. It's a turn and burn because I have to go back because my son is leaving for India for 9 months on Saturday.
Is this the same son that's going to be like? Isn't he going to the West Point or the Air Force Academy or something?
Well, he got into Princeton. He's going to Princeton, but he's doing a bridge year program that Princeton offers to send kids to other countries to do service work.
Wow.
Like a mini Peace Corps
kind of thing. Awesome. Well, Princeton, that's amazing. For some reason, I thought you had one of your kids was going to a service academy.
So. Well, he was applying to those, and sadly, his nut allergies medically disqualified him.
Oh my God. Well, Princeton is quite a backup plan.
Yeah, and you can see I'm wearing my I'm excited to. Well, I mean, I'm not excited to drop him off. I'm excited for him. It's going to be a crazy year for him to be on his. I mean, he's going to be with the program, but like, living abroad, plus especially in a place like India, is no joke.
Absolutely. Well, it's an adventure.